Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
I'm not crying, you're crying. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. All right, I am crying, but so are you. Admit it, you're crying. And here, still crying, is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stilberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And not crying, but drinking his way through it is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
You guys got the benefit of a bank holiday to soothe the pain. I did not. Fortunately for me, I do not have a job to go to, so it doesn't matter. What a special day. I mean, such a special, special day. And a day that was so emblematic of everything that Arsene stands for. His philosophy was on display on the pitch. His ideals and his erudition and his qualities as a human being were on display in his speech. There was so much about what makes the club special on display, both in the stands and on the pitch. Maybe a few things to be disappointed in as well that we can touch on. I want to get to some of the game stuff, but I think that has to take a backseat to the celebration of Arsene Wenger. And Tim, since you were there, I will start with you and just maybe you can summarize without covering all of it, so we have something to do a podcast on, what it felt like. I mean, you had come to the conclusion that a lot of us had, that it was time to move on from this manager. But on the day, emotionally, how did it hit you?
Yeah, it really did. I think it really hit everyone. One of the things and it wasn't just the emotion, which really started to kick in afterwards, but during the game, what really kind of really made me happy about the day was this really felt like an occasion, and I thought it would. I got up to the ground, as is traditional. We always have a lunch before the last home game of the season. The guys I drink with at home games. And so I got up there about 12:30, and I went, 4 hours before kickoff. I went to get a programme. I went to sign. They've got like a book in the armoury where you can write a little message to Arsene Wenger, and I did that. I signed the book. And, the cues for the programmes when I was walking to the ground, it really, really reminded me the whole day in so many respects of the last ever game at Highbury. It just felt like, and, the sun was out, which always really helps. What it really felt like was everybody came completely determined to enjoy and soak up the occasion. And the reason that hit me so much was just because I think home games for the last couple of years now, everyone's seen the empty seats. But as well as that, a lot of people, I think, have just been going out of a sense of obligation. And you really felt that in the stadium. And it's weird because not everybody, but lots of people seem to think that, Arsenal fans are like super angry all the time, and they see like one or two people who are on Arsenal fan TV and one or two people who rant on Twitter, and they think that that's everybody and that's like the prevailing mood at the stadium. And it hasn't been for some time. There's been like a slightly grumpy undercurrent at the Emirates. It's been a little bit more volatile at away games, but it's not, that stadium has never taken against him. There's been an undercurrent, but there's never been like a Wenger out chant or anything like that at the Emirates. But yesterday, it really felt like everyone came to the game determined to enjoy it. And right from the off, there was singing, not just about Arsene, but, there was a real mood of reflection and celebration and singing, the names of like Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira and Dennis Bergkamp. And it really felt like everyone was completely determined to just enjoy the occasion and soak it up for what it was. And that's in such stark contrast to what home games have actually been over the last few years, where either people just straight haven't turned up or have turned up half interested or turned up kind of, thinking the first misplaced pass, I'm going to vent some spleen. That is what I've come here to do. I've come here to be miserable, to be angry, whatever else. And yesterday that all went away, and it really, really felt like a celebration. It wasn't mawkish. It wasn't funereal. It really felt like everyone sensed that they were witnessing history. And I absolutely loved every minute of it. I really, really did. And I think what it showed as well, it's easy and it's convenient to think, like I said earlier, that everyone's just been like screaming like banshees for years, and Arsenal have been forcing their manager out and things like that. I think Paul said something very, very important about a week or two ago on this podcast.
Let's not go down that road.
Well, he said that actually he felt quite proud because he recognised that the vast, vast, vast majority of Arsenal fans, and you'd almost call them the silent majority, have been totally respectful. Probably we've come to a stage where, the vast majority want him to leave, but the vast majority are almost fairly silent in that wish, just sitting there going, oh God, Arsene, please stop this. We all love you. We don't want this anymore. That's been the prevailing feeling. And what happened yesterday was that everybody got the chance to just cast that to one side and express their gratitude. And the last couple of years where it's just been a little bit of a drag and it's been a little bit, oh God, Arsene, please just go. I'm not going to stand here and chant for you to leave, but please just stop this. And it's very convenient for some people to think that all Arsenal fans are horrible bastards driving their manager out, but that's not it. That's not it at all. There's a loud minority, and they're quite entitled to be a loud minority if they want to be. But there's a loud minority. But I think what you saw yesterday, everyone stayed after the final whistle. And I know we won 5-0, but everyone turned up as well. And like I said, the keys for the programmes, the keys for the book in the armoury, it felt like everyone had been set free, and it was like, right, finally, I just get to say thank you. I get to cast off the last 2 years where it's been under my skin a bit, where I love this man, but I really want him to leave. And now all of that is put to one side. And it just felt like, very like carnival-like. And it was very emotional. And the kind of the stuff afterwards, I thought the club handled it perfectly. They got the balance exactly right between. So I thought Ivan Gazidis' press conference, for example, after the announcement, I mean, it was a power play. It was him like swinging his dick about going, I'm the big man here now. And it was a bit of an ego move. But it was also like a bit mawkish and a bit funereal. And I think Arsene Wenger made some reference to that. But actually, I think the club got it spot on yesterday. I think they handled it perfectly. And the gesture of giving him, the gold trophy, I think, is absolutely pitch and tone perfect. Really, really perfect. And they didn't do anything before the game. Really, it was all after the game, and it was a fun. And I use the word occasion very, very emphatically. It was a great occasion, and you know what? I think Arsene enjoyed it as well. I know, he'll say that he's generally the kind of personality that doesn't like being the centre of attention. He doesn't like it being about him. But, I watched him walk around and do that lap of appreciation, and he enjoyed that. And he was 10 paces ahead of the rest of the team. And that might have been the team taking a bit of distance from him and allowing him some respectful distance. But he didn't exactly fall back. He enjoyed it. He really enjoyed that. And it was great to see. And for me, that was fantastic, because even though, I'd have preferred to see him go out with the FA Cup above his head at Wembley, for example, on the couple of occasions he's had that opportunity. But what was nice about this was that everyone knew it was the last game, and everyone knew it was just their chance to say thank you. And that really, really came through. And it just felt like a lot of bad feeling and a lot of gnawing emotions just completely washed away. And also, I'm sure we'll get into this. There's a little bit, excitement about the future in there as well. Yeah. There's a little bit of the king is dead, long live the king. There's definitely a big element of that. But I thought it was by far and away my favourite game at the Emirates so far. And it was wonderful. It was a great occasion.
I think they got it spot on. I will address two things before I turn it over to you, Clive. One is just that day made me realize how silly it was to worry about him winning the Europa League and going out on top, or even winning the FA Cup. My fear and pain after Thursday night was he won't get the send-off he deserves. He won't get to go off on a high. But what you realize about the magnitude of his impact on the club and the impact he had emotionally on so many Arsenal supporters, and the way he's been woven into the fabric of English football, and the accomplishments he's had, and the magnitude of 22 years, is that it didn't matter how he went out. And that on the day he was celebrated, it was bigger than any Europa League trophy or FA Cup trophy or indeed any trophy, and that the celebration itself was the trophy. And to worry that he would not get to go out on top now seems so unnecessary in retrospect. And I'm so glad that it turned out that way. And on the day, it felt so silly to me to have had that concern. He got the love and appreciation that he deserved and had earned, and it flooded back instantly. I instantly missed him more than I expected I would. I instantly respected him more than I already did, which was tremendously a lot, to have a terrible turn of phrase. So that was one thing that struck me. The other thing that struck me, and I don't know if you guys will agree with this, because I rarely make points that people agree with, but I quit a career once, and I was not in it as long as he was, obviously, but it was a career that I'd studied for, that I'd gone to school for, and it was a big decision to quit it. And in the months leading up to that decision and eventually departing, I was paralyzed by fear that I was making the wrong choice, and what was I doing with my life? And the day I walked out of the building, I felt 20 pounds lighter, and I couldn't stop smiling ear to ear. And actually, once I had done it, the relief washed over me. And watching Arsene, and certainly there was some sadness, and certainly there was some sense of loss, but the joy he seemed to have, to me, suggests that maybe now that he's actually doing it, that he's actually confronting it, he's realizing, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I am kind of happy to be walking away. I am appreciative of the love and affection that I'm getting, and this is something that I can do. And so, I wonder, Clive, did you connect with that at all? A feeling that a manager who had held on so tightly in such petrified fear of losing this job and this attachment in the moment when he was receiving that adulation and realizing it was over, that maybe, just maybe, he too had gone through a transformation and started to appreciate that it is for the best that he's stepping aside?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, Tim had me at set free. It looked like he'd been set free. It looked like a man, I've worked in the city, in corporate environments, and those people who at work who are completely institutionalized and they can't even imagine the next day without their job. I felt that watching Wenger closely over the last few days, he looks like somebody that was fearful and institutionalized and so engrossed in his role that he had never had a chance to look at himself. And I actually think he's been set free. And I think he doesn't know what he's going to do. And rather than be fearful, he looks quite excited and quite happy. And I think it's almost wonderful to watch, almost like a rebirth of him, to see him smiling, to see his face in a completely different light. And I think not only has he been set free, I think the ground has been set free. I think the club has been set free. I've never seen the Emirates look so good. It just looked fantastic. Everything, the atmosphere, and I've often called Arsenal a sleeping giant. And when you see the crowd, the way it was, I don't know how it felt. I didn't go, and I don't know how it felt, but it just looked completely unified, completely full up, completely looking beautiful, and everything was smiling and everything was together. And I just kept thinking, not in a horrible way, it looks like everything's been set free. The manager's been set free. The club has been set free. The limits have gone. The players look set free. Everything looked like the sky's the limit. Right? I think there's a mini momentum there. And I hope that something, the next action can grab this momentum and reconnect the club again. Because there's something there under the current. And Tim's point about the silent majority is a really apt one. I think there's a lot of people who go but don't really engage, but they go. There's a lot of people that don't go, that really want to go, but they just stay quiet because they don't want to offend the club that they love. And there's a lot of people that are, there's a few people that are angry, and they're the ones that seem to be controlling our identity, right? So I really believe that there's a limitless future for this club, a limitless future. I think we're going to find out how big we are. We're going to find out our voice in that ground. We're going to find our voices as away fans as well. And I'm excited. I'm really pleased that it's gone so well for him, because he deserves that for 22 years. And I don't feel limited as an individual, as a fan, and I don't feel the club feels limited any longer. And I just hope we make the right moves going forward to really capture this feeling.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And, not to talk about DVDs because that's kind of a Spurs thing, but if you made a Blu-ray or a MP4 video of this day, what a hell of a recruitment video for the next manager, for upcoming players, for sponsors. I mean, the class of the club, the ability to pull together the big moments. It's a place that I think anyone would want to be attached to and involved with based on that day. And it's so great because Arsenal had become really a black hole in some respects, in the sense of the mood around the club, the empty seats, the sagging Premier League performances, the lack of trophies this season, although, obviously there were the FA Cups, and to finish on such a high, so unified, really in an envious position, as amazing as that sounds. Maybe Arsene's best gift to the club in departing is, yes, I'm leaving us in sixth, and yes, there are some problems around the club, but my departure so unified everyone that it actually lifted the club again and allowed this summer to be a better summer than maybe it would have been otherwise. And I definitely think there's a lot of excitement, a lot to look forward to. And it's just wonderful to feel the chance for everybody to pull together and celebrate something together, and also have the excitement of something new to debate and discuss and analyze. And so I just think it's a total renewal. I will terribly, terribly miss Arsene, and at the same time, I am excited for the future that we embark on together. I want to cover a couple more things about the day. We can talk a little bit about his actual speech. I thought it was beautiful, and certainly the way he suggested that everybody get behind the players, the way that he expressed his best wishes for Alex Ferguson, just showing his class, his quality as a human being. But, Tim, there were certain questions about a couple of things around the stadium, one of which is the absence of Thierry Henry. I mean, do you want to just quickly touch on this? Do you feel that, do you buy the argument that Henry is this guy employee and he had to do what his job required, that maybe he stayed away to keep attention off him, that maybe there is some bad blood there and, he wasn't wanted there? What would be your feeling about his absence?
I don't have a strong feeling about his absence, actually. I guess because I don't know enough of the detail. It could be that Sky just said, no, you work for us, you're contracted to us, we're not showing this game today, you're working for us, which, is fine. Everyone misses stuff for work.
Yeah, well, they were presenting the trophy to City, right? I mean, I don't get Sky, obviously, but so, I mean, it's not like it was a nothing game. It was the trophy presentation day. No,
and, Tony Adams, very kind of notoriously stayed away from Arsenal.
Was Bergkamp there, Tim? Was Bergkamp there?
I didn't see, to be honest. They were right over. I sit right on the opposite side to the tunnel. So other than the ones that came up on the screen, I didn't really see who was there. I saw Petit, Ali Adier.
I didn't see Gervinho. But he didn't turn up.
No, well, yeah, there we go. But yeah, it's difficult to have strong feelings on it because I don't have enough of the details. And, he might have his reasons. He might have his reasons. They don't necessarily have to be bad or based in bad blood. I don't have a strong feeling about it. It was about Arsene, really. And listen, I'm sure they've got each other on WhatsApp, Thierry and Arsene. I'm sure Thierry will and probably already has expressed his feelings towards Arsene Wenger privately, and I'm sure he does regularly anyway, so he probably didn't really need to be. It would have been nice for us, and I'm sure whatever Henry's reasons are, I'm sure Wenger was the first to know about them.
I mean, I know there are some people that feel strongly about him being away. I have a hard time connecting with that personally, because first of all, why should someone else's celebration of an event impact your ability to enjoy it and celebrate it? And likewise, I don't really know what Thierry Henry has to do for me to love him any more than I do. I mean, whatever he does now as a pundit, fine, it can annoy me, but it's not going to undo 227 goals for Arsenal.
And I think this is a little bit of fans living vicariously through players. It's because we wanted him to be there, and
to add to our emotion too, right? I mean,
exactly,
for us, it's selfish.
It's not about Arsene. Like I said, whatever Thierry Henry's reasons were for not being there, Arsene Wenger will know about them, and that's probably I'd love to have seen him there, but he's not a stranger to the place. He's there quite regularly, so I don't think it's a big deal really.
Quickly, Tim, is there any specific moment, specific thing the club did or word that was said or an experience you had that you will always remember the day by or will be the first memory you think back on when you reflect on the day?
Yeah, probably. So I sit with a friend of mine from school and his dad, and those two. I go all over the country with them. I sit with them at away games, and we've all been going together for a good kind of 17, 18 years now, and they're not actually my blood family, but like my friend's dad was my best man at my wedding and stuff like that. And yeah, it was, and so it was, my one of my friends is very kind of ardent Arsene, almost apologist at times. He only broke on Arsene this season, during this season was the first
Good
time, and and he would only say it like quite privately. He was just like, probably in any organisation, 22 years is too long. And but he feels very, very strongly about Arsene. But yeah, we had a moment. We had like a nice moment. It was just a kind of, we're witnessing real history here. And I think as well. My wife and I spoke about this on the way to the game, and we obviously you go into reflective mode and stuff like that. And we were talking about, it's going to be quite difficult unless the next manager is like Vieira, for example, which I wouldn't be surprised if it was. For the next guy, it's going to be a job, and that might be difficult to adjust to. Those like little conversations you have with people that mean a lot to you, that you go with, and you've all got this sense that. It was exactly like the last day at Highbury in that respect. It was just like we're witnessing history today. This is something, even beforehand, we were like, we know we're never going to forget this day, and we're going to go back to it and talk about it a lot. And it was those kind of, I suppose it was more of a bond with the people that you go with and you share these moments with, because that's what really embellishes it, even more than the players. It's the people that you experience with that makes it not just important but like life affirming. And I think everyone had that sense today. Everyone knew from the second the announcement was made. Everyone knew that this game was going to be the one everyone would want to go to. Everyone wanted a programme from. Everyone wanted a piece of. People were just coming around the stadium. Didn't have tickets. They just wanted to be in the postcode when this was happening. Maybe not an absolute specific moment, but those kind of that sense of share, that sense of unity, that sense of shared, like we're witnessing history here.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that my mic was muted. That's on me. That's on me, guys. Sorry, I'll take the L there. I think that's very well said. I have quite the noisy environment today, so I will be on mute, which has the benefit of prohibiting some of my usual instinct to interrupt. So I'm sure you guys will enjoy that. It doesn't mean I won't jump in there and interrupt, but probably a little bit less. Clive, there were goodbyes for some other important people at the club. There was Alex Scott, Per Mertesacker, Vic Akers. How did you connect with those? Obviously Arsene Wenger was the headliner, but Vic has been there for 30 plus years, 30 some odd years. Mertesacker has been a prominent figure at the club since his arrival, and someone who I think really gets it and has connected with the club more than just as the average player. And obviously, was Alex Scott the captain of the women's team?
Up until recently, yes. Asking me, you should be asking Tim. But
all right, fair enough.
She hasn't been playing as much because she's very much in the media game now. But,
Got it.
She's still the club captain.
She's a bit pair this season. She's the club captain, but she doesn't really play.
Got it. So she's very, very tall. Okay. So in any event, how do you think the club did in balancing, goodbyes for them, and how did you sort of react to those goodbyes as well?
Well, the club do it perfectly, don't they? And this is what we do. Right? We do it absolutely perfectly. We do it in the right order. We do it the right way. And again, with Per, for example, there's some great articles about him today, and I think he's going to have a massively important role going forward, this guy he's different. He's special, I tell you now. He's got something about him. The way he can really look at himself, understand himself, the experiences he's had. I mean, he moves into a role where he's going to be, he's going to be a chief mentor type, chief really strong figure in the club to a lot of our young people and young players. We get obsessed by the first teamers, but there's most of the key people at the club who we've got who are going to hold our hands to in the future. They're all under 21, right? So there's lots of people under the age of 21 that go throughout that club at Hale End and at Colney, and we get sort of fixed on the 15, 20 or so that are the high paid people, and his influence is going to grow, and I can see him being a major figure in the club going forward. Yeah. Depends how he wants to develop, if he wants to coach, but just read some of the articles out there about him. I mean, I just have not read a bad word about him. And I think he's going to be very interesting to watch his development. And at a time when we are seeing Wenger walk out of the club, in my opinion, I said, put a question through to Arsecast today, right? And I said, do you think that as a club, as an employer, have we failed Wenger? And what I meant by that, I wish we'd have done this sooner. I wish we'd have forced his hand sooner. It may have forced him to look at himself like he is doing right now. And we wouldn't have all these many years of experience walking out of the club. I don't think that's smart organisational growth. Right? So what we should have done was recognise the failings when they were there, did not allow him to carry on holding all the balls in the air, prepared much sooner for progression and succession. And then we have that man in the club in a role that befits him, befits his intelligence. And with someone like that walking out, I'm glad that Per doesn't walk out, because I think a lot of the values that Wenger holds are in Mertesacker. And I think a lot of those good values will continue, and there'll be a good stewardship over the club. Standards will be set around the club. And I think he's going to be a very, very important figure. And the way the club managed that was absolutely fantastic. It was great to see him get some minutes on the pitch, but also the reaction of the crowd.
It was great. Every touch.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that little cuddle he gave Arsene before he subbed on, I mean, that kind of got to me a little bit, I have to admit.
He shows you that everyone can see him, see the good in him, right? So
it was the first sort of really unrestrained moment of the day, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't stage managed, it was just like true joy and affection.
There's a bond. There's definitely an adult bond there. You can see that for absolute admiration both ways, and I think a lot of Wenger's values are in Per Mertesacker, and I think they'll continue.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to when Mourinho announces his departure at United, Luke Shaw coming on and giving him the same kind of cuddle like that. It'll be a nice warm moment for them. Tim, I mean, do you have any sort of final thoughts about those guys, Mertesacker, Alex Scott, or Vic Akers?
Yeah. So with Per, again, it was great. And, a bit of what I was talking about earlier about, unifying and things like that and creating bonds. And Per really has that. Like, we've seen, and don't get me wrong, this is a World Cup winning centre-half. He's really a top quality player. We've seen better, and most of us can remember, that very famous Arsenal back five. So, you come in after that, or that Invincibles back four, you come in after that, you've really got to do something to impress Arsenal fans as a centre half. As weird as that sounds in 2018, but it's not. We liked Per because he was good, but the reason everyone loves him so much is not just because he comes across so well and as a really nice guy, but he gets it. He properly gets this club, and you could sense from the second he walked in that it was, he felt like it was a privilege to play for Arsenal. I spoke to someone who works at Arsenal, not in like a high level capacity, fairly like administrative, and it was towards the end of his first season. It was an away game, and Mertesacker came over. I think we'd won 1-0 at Fulham or something, and he scored the winner. And he came over, absolute fists pumping over to the away end. And I was sat next to this guy, and he said, and we kind of said, Per really seems to get this. He really seems to be an Arsenal man. And he said, as someone who works kind of behind the scenes at the club and does some of the Arsenal community stuff, he said he'll be here for years. He's taken to it straight away. He loves it, and and sometimes I don't know if that happens by chance or whether he's made an effort to get it or whether he just found. Arsene Wenger always says, I found a club that reflected my values and that I loved them, and maybe it's just that, or maybe he made like a proper effort. I suspect it's somewhere between both of them, to be honest.
Nothing wrong with that.
I think there's a little bit of just history there. When he was a young lad, he came to London, him and his brother, and I think their dad bought him a shirt each, and he just bought him an Arsenal shirt. And from a young child, he just had that connection, and it's funny how life goes, right? Many years later, you end up playing for the club and winning the World Cup while you're at the club. And I just think there's something happening there with him. People just appear in your life, appear in your club. Yeah. You think, well, he's a bit different. He's got something else. And if you look back over, the whole Wenger era thing and looking back had made me realise how many key people are even not alive anymore or taken away from the club and got reduced roles. And you think about even people like Vic Hake has been there the whole time. The physios have changed. Everything's changed apart from Wenger. And then you think about who's going to continue this going forward? Who's going to hold the standards going forward? And I'm looking at Mertesacker. I'm thinking, mate, as long as you're around, this club will also always hold its values, will always be there. And I think it's very important.
And I think that a lot of that was behind the decision to bring Jens Lehmann in as well. You're right.
I agree, Tim.
Look at who the two guys were. They chose, sorry, this is a slightly side point, but given the reception Sir Chips got, it's telling that they gave Bob Wilson the microphone and not Sir Chips. I mean, it's probably too late now.
For the best.
That is an Arsenal chairman right there. Bob Wilson should have been made chairman some years ago, I think, because of he's very stately, but you're right, like Bob Wilson and Pat Rice, their association with the club goes back to the mid-60s. Obviously they're around the club, but they don't work for it anymore, and they were both there when Wenger arrived. That's 50 years of lineage right there, and that's not to be sniffed at. That's really not to be sniffed at. I think you're right. I think Per kind of carries that on, and I've actually met his brother before, Timo. His brother comes to away games and sits in the away end. I met his brother in Naples at Napoli away some years ago. We were talking to him. We were like, surely, at Napoli away it's a bit dicey, it's a bit dangerous, and we were talking to him and we were like, why the hell have you come into the away end today? Like, surely you could have got tickets somewhere else. And he was talking about it was very important to me and my brother, that we got this city, that we got this club, and that we understood the kind of the heartbeat of this club, and that always really impressed me, because his brother doesn't have to do that.
Thanks for never sharing that with us earlier, Tim. What the fuck has that been in the lockbox? What a great story.
But lots of people know that. But and I'll try and be quick on on Vic and Alex as well. And Alex, it was wonderful to hear the Tottenham Hotspur "She's won more than you" chant when she was presented. But that's a gross understatement. She's won more than Arsene Wenger. She's won 6 league titles, 7 FA Cups, and scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. So she's an absolute club legend. I'm actually interviewing her on Saturday, which will be her last home game for Arsenal Women. Someone I've spoken to many times over the years, really, really, really nice woman, and a really top professional, and that's why Arsenal kept her around. She wanted to retire last summer because her media career is taking off, and Arsenal wanted to keep her around for one more year. And it's the same reason that Arsenal kept Per Mertesacker and Mikel Arteta around, even though they could barely play anymore.
But I'd venture to say, Tim, if I could just cut across you there, since I have the mic off mute, I would venture to say that it is a bigger thing to ask of her, because while Per Mertesacker makes millionaires money as a player, I wouldn't doubt that Alex Scott maybe stands to make more in her media career than she does as a women's player. So choosing to put that on hold to stay with Arsenal probably meant choosing to forego greater earning power. And so, I mean, even a bigger sacrifice.
Yeah, absolutely, and she's just got huge respect from absolutely everyone, and with the women's team, lineage is very important. One of the things the women's team have done, they've kept around some of the old players like Faye White and Claire Wheatley, who've won like 20, 25 trophies and stuff like that. They're all still there. And they're not going to be able to keep Alex there because she's got another career coming, but they wanted her there for one more year because she's done so much, she's won so much, she's a top professional, someone who has everyone's respect, and for a team that has been as successful as the Arsenal ladies/women team, to stand out as a legend there, you've really, really got to do something, and she absolutely has. And it's been a privilege for me to be able to speak to her so many times as well. She's a fantastic person. And
I'm going to make a quick on-mic apology because I, as a credit to how many people were at the Emirates on Sunday, I actually wound up writing the Arsblog match report because apparently the 800 people who would be ahead of me on the list of people to do that were at the stadium. So it's something I hadn't done before and something that I'm certainly not qualified to do. So while I appreciate being asked, I stressed out about it maybe more than I should have. And as a result, when I was listing the farewells, I did leave her off that list, and I feel terrible about it. And it was purely by virtue of being overwhelmed by doing something that I am not really qualified to do. So I wanted to on mic apologize for that and suggest that it is an omission that I regret. But I do think it has become in vogue to criticize the Arsenal board and Gazidis and the club ownership and suggest that, you don't trust them to properly replace Arsene Wenger and that with him gone, we'll really see the failings. But I think it's worth pointing out, we've gone from Dick Law chasing Joel Campbell around Costa Rica for a summer and the cringy, audacious stunt, if you remember, of putting the British core up on the side of the Emirates, to stage managing an event like this so beautifully, so brilliantly, executing it so effectively, to securing Aubameyang in January, I would say quite efficiently, to our business being done more swiftly, more competently, maybe a bright young center back arriving in Mavropanos. I think you could argue that between Raul and Sven and maybe even Gazidis securing sleeve sponsorships and maybe getting Nike for us after Puma are done butchering Arsenal shirts and things like that, that maybe, just maybe, the club is not in the worst hands. Again, I'm not trying to lionize people that don't deserve it. I'm just suggesting that this day, to me, and how well it was executed, and I realize a lot of people are involved in that, and it's not just, the chief executive or anything like that, right down to the social media and the content they created, the club really executed, and executed quite brilliantly. So I think the club deserves credit for that, and deserves credit for maybe not being the incompetent mess that we sometimes like to portray it as being, just because the football isn't going the way we'd like. So I don't ever want to stop celebrating Arsene Wenger, but I do think we are 37 minutes into the podcast, and there are some other things to get to. There was a football match played, not to mention that while we have been recording this, the Oracle, Ornstein, has tweeted about the next manager and the fact that it will be decided by the World Cup. It should be announced that it won't be Tuchel. Tim, do you have a
no idea.
Tuchel?
No idea.
It won't be the Tuchel guy. That guy. It won't be him. Thomas. It won't be Thomas. It won't be. I have to get the tweet up in front of me. I had it. This is such lazy podcast hosting, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here we go. He says, no idea who, but not Simeone, not Tuchel, not Lowe. Rodgers, Faria, etc. Don't sense Enrique. Here, Allegri plans to leave Juventus, but unclear on next move. But they do say they want a proper process and to respect those who already currently have jobs and want to name the boss by the World Cup, which seems actually a little bit late, to be fair. But having said that, there's not a lot of transfer business that gets done before or during the World Cup anyway. So in this case, maybe it's not the end of the world, especially if Raul and Sven are driving the ship more in terms of recruitment. Not to mention that we have a whopping £50 million. So, we could buy a backup right back. Anyway, that's the news, and we'll come on to that in a moment. I think we should spend a little bit of time on the match. I had thought about digging into the dichotomy of criticizing Arsene and wanting him out, and, idiots like Oliver Holt who felt the need to, drag Arsenal supporters on Twitter. But I don't even want to give him the oxygen. It's not worth it. It was a stupid comment, and, he doesn't deserve our time and analysis. So let's dive into the match. And, Clive, this match is is one of those things that leaves me thinking maybe the cupboard's not as bare as people suggest. And I realize it's just one game at the end of the season when all the pressure is off, but at least from an attacking standpoint, and this was without Mesut Özil, and we can maybe touch on that a little too, there is a swashbuckling attacking side in here. Burnley are not a team that are used to conceding a lot of goals. They were thrashed. How much did you enjoy the football that we played on the day?
Yeah, football was beautiful, wasn't it? Sun was shining, the pitch was freshly watered, and the ball was moving, and it just looked great. And everything that the Wenger era represented was on show. We had decisive defenders. We had fullbacks playing high. Xhaka could turn around 3 times before anyone got near him and pass it out to those fullbacks. We had Iwobi and Jack punching through holes, and we had Mkhitaryan taking shots, Aubameyang taking shots, Lacazette taking shots. It all looks great. It all looks great, and which probably only adds to the frustration and adds to people's complexity and wondering where has this been. And I know Wenger then quoted our home record. To be fair, our home record has been good, apart from maybe 2 Manchester games, and one we were slapped, the other one we were really unlucky.
That's actually an interesting point. We've been the best home team in the league, I believe, aside from Manchester City.
Yeah, and really the Man City game was the one where I felt it was just bad timing after the League Cup final, and we looked really, really, really crushed, right? So the Atletico game, I know it was a 1-1 draw, but it was a 1-1 draw where we were in charge and we messed up. And a Manchester United game was one of the most fantastic games that I've seen. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about Arsenal at home, but Arsenal away is a different thing. And as we'll come on to that, no doubt. But yeah, really nice to watch. Really good flow. Really good movement. All the aspects of the game that we debate at times that we don't have were there. 2 really forceful strikers. A third one come on and he broke the post. I mean, what's not to like, right? There's literally not a lot you can.
Did it encourage you about Lacazette and Aubameyang having a Arsenal career going forward together?
Yeah, it's something that we've all spotted on this podcast almost immediately. Just look at the 2 of them and think they've got a chance if they play together. If they play together, what they do well, they complement each other. It's simple as that. It's obvious they complement each other. They know the penalty box. If you push them up, they can go in behind. But if you sit deep, they can move in the box. That's a really interesting pair, right? That's really is. Aubameyang scores a lot of his goals in the box, but if you want to push him up on the halfway line, you're in trouble. Lacazette, he's very smart. He can get in behind, but they both know the penalty box. And that's interesting because Arsenal are going to have a lot of teams pushed back into their box. And I've often felt sometimes we were a bit, without Giroud, we're a bit thick in the box. We don't move so well. So I think Aubameyang's movement's really, really good. There's potential there. There's potential at the top end with Mkhitaryan, Aubameyang, Lacazette. If you add a good Özil, I'm sure we'll come on to him, then you've got 4 very, very, very good names on the backs of shirts. It all comes about how we set the platform for them, what type of style we want to play, what type of manager we have. And if we make sure we don't have too many artisans versus what we need to do to shut the back door. And then the future looks brighter. Yeah,
I don't think the cupboard is nearly as bare. I mean, look, defensively, it might be totally bare. I mean, not to dismiss Chambers and Mavropanos. We'll talk about them a little bit. But I mean, in the sense that Koscielny's career may well be done. Mertesacker's leaving. Mustafi, we're not totally sure what we have in him. So, and we don't have a goalkeeper. So that certainly has to be addressed. But, Tim, I mean, your thoughts on Lacazette and Aubameyang together? This was a game where we saw them take turns occupying central positions and making central runs into the box, and they kind of started to look like they had the balance right of alternating between taking up wide positions and central positions. Was this the best balance you'd seen in terms of their deployment that way?
Definitely, it was far more fluid. It was really like there weren't really any fixed positions. Even Mkhitaryan, he went right, he went left. Sometimes he wandered centre a bit, and Iwobi went a little bit wider. It was totally fluid between the 4 of them, really. And sometimes that needs a lot of understanding to work. But the signs between Lacazette and Aubameyang are really good. I'm not sure if it's a natural chemistry. It might be. But what's impressed me particularly about Aubameyang is how much he looks for other players. and how unselfish he is. So like both his goals, I knew he could do that. I've watched YouTube clips and seen Dortmund goals. I know he can do that. But I didn't know an awful lot else. I don't watch the Bundesliga every week, but those goals didn't surprise me. But where I've been, maybe taken a bit by surprise is how often he looks for his teammates. He looks for other players, and it reminds me a little bit of, the way Henry used to do that. Henry used to, he was nearly prolific in the assists kind of field as he was a goal scorer, and Aubameyang's got a little bit of that about him, the way he looks for others. And what's really interested me, it would have been so easy for him to come in, and I guess maybe I was kind of expecting this, and him to go, right, I'm the daddy now, kind of thing. For anyone who's seen the movie Scum, it would have been very easy for him to like come in and do that, and go, yep, sorry Lacazette, I'm the one they really wanted. It's me. I'm playing through the middle. I'm going up front, and you're going to take a back seat. But he really, really hasn't. He's really looks to me on the pitch like he's made every effort to kind of say, no, we can work together, with Lacazette in particular. And he already has that relationship with Mkhitaryan, which has been very, very useful for us because it's helped both of their acclimatisation. And look, when you buy 28, 29-year-olds, you kind of expect them to hit the ground running. But this was one of Lacazette's best performances for me. He was he was far more sparky. The shoulders weren't slunk. He wasn't like hiding, marking himself out of the game. He was popping out and kind of, taking control of the ball. He looked much stronger.
Looks fitter, doesn't he, Tim? Looks fitter.
Yeah, he really did. It really looked like that kind of... and, he might have a stinker in the next two games. I might regret saying it, but it might... That kind of light bulb moment you get when a player fully adapts and you think, here we go, this is what we've got. And
to be fair, just really quickly, also he's played a lot of games recently with heavily rotated sides protecting the Europa League. Yeah. So, this was, and I realize Ozil wasn't in the side, but this was his chance to play with Lacazette and Mkhitaryan and some really good attacking talent around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so one of the reasons I probably noticed it a little bit more, just to kind of row back to the Arsenal women for a minute. I was at the Women's Cup final on Saturday, and I spoke to which unfortunately we lost, and I spoke to both of Arsenal's centre halves after the game, and I spoke to Leah Williamson, and she's a real like student of the game, and I spoke to her about Chelsea's attack because Chelsea ladies don't play with a fixed striker, but they have about 6 players who chip in like 10 plus goals a season. They just have like loads of attacking midfielders, and they all rotate. And she was kind of saying the thing is with Chelsea is they gamble and they leave 4 up all the time. They just leave 4 players up and they let the other 6 just sweep up, and they sweep up quickly and they get the ball forward again. And they just say to those 4 players, we don't care where you stand. We don't care. Like, we don't want you to go chasing after the ball. But when the attack breaks down, leave that to the other 6 and they will get the ball back to you very, very quickly. And, just don't bother with the chasing back stuff. Stay up wherever you like. Stay up on the right wing, on the left wing, centre forward, wherever you want. But just stay up so it's always 4 on 4. Mm-hmm. And that kind of reminded me of what Arsenal did yesterday. It was a little bit, not quite 4 on 4, but it was just like Lacazette, Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang. It just looked like they enjoyed themselves. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they didn't chase back or anything like that. In fact, there was an incident where Aubameyang chased back to the corner flag to win the ball back. But, it really felt like that, it's fairly typical Arsene, isn't it? It's a bit freeform, a bit jazz, and when it works like it did yesterday, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, but I think there's a little something else to this, Tim, and it's the development of a midfield 3, and it's where I think the Mesut Özil question starts to become an important one, because first of all, I think Alex Iwobi has had back-to-back fantastic games. I think he was fantastic at Old Trafford. I thought he was fantastic yesterday. And this is a player I've been very critical of as one of the 3 forwards, and maybe he isn't one of the 3 forwards. Maybe he is part of a midfield 3, because that's how he's played the last 2 games, and I thought he's done it brilliantly. Xhaka, Wilshere, and Iwobi controlled the midfield. They were progressive, a lot of line-breaking passes, a lot of good driving forward moves. I mean, for Kolasinac's goal, we saw Jack sort of turn back the clock, trick his way past a guy, and surge forward, and it was great to see. But this is really the issue, isn't it? And Clive, of course, I want you to come in on this as well. In fact, how about this? How about Clive? Why don't you come in for this? We'll come back to Tim on it. But I mean, how significant is it that we saw this performance happen with Lacazette, Mkhitaryan, and Aubameyang up front, but a true three in midfield to control and advance and build the play, as opposed to having Mesut Özil sort of nominally as one of the three, but sort of losing some of that controlling flow. I mean, what's your take on how you get the best out of that kind of system?
Well, you know my take, right?
Get rid of Mesut Özil. Yeah.
Well, we have decisions to make soon. We really do, right? And when we stop fitting in people and try to work to a system, say, by the way, you've got to fit into that system, rather than fitting in people because they got big names on the back of their shirts, then we're going to get somewhere, right? So I'm a pragmatist. I like to make sure that nothing comes down the middle, right? So I like, I look at people like Iwobi and I think, okay, you're quite nice on the ball going forward. You can take it on a half turn, you can drive, you can pass, you're quite strong in one-on-one contact, but I don't think you can press the ball defensively. You need to press the ball defensively and be able to sustain it and not go off with cramp after 65 minutes. So if I'm his manager, I'm thinking, well, you've got real power, real strength. You can drive like Jack. You're stronger, you're faster, and you're young. Now, if I can develop that defensive side to your game and make you last 90 minutes, you've got a chance to be a number 8, like City have their 2 number 8s in David Silva and De Bruyne, right? So why can't he do that job? Well, he hasn't got the all-round game yet, so we've got to develop that, right? I know from Man United friends of mine that Mkhitaryan has done that a few times for Manchester United. You can see he's got the intensity to go and challenge the ball, but you can see he can travel with it. He's an all-round midfielder and he's got end product. Does he play deeper? Does he play higher? At the moment, he looks so dangerous higher. You play him higher. I don't want to criticise anybody, but there are other players in our squad who have not got that level of intensity, which means we can't play them deeper. So we've got to find a way to fit them in higher. Then you start getting into system discussions, right? So I don't want to get too deep into this because we don't know what a new manager is going to do. We don't know how he's going to play. But I do believe there's a number of players in our squad that have very much overlapping talents. And then we have some major gaps in our squad that need to be filled. And amongst those, we've got many overlapping talents. And I do think there's a decision to be made if you're looking to build your squad appropriately. We haven't got a wide winger, a dribbler that's very, very fast, maybe with a left foot. We need that player in the squad. I think we definitely need a centre-half. We definitely need some full-back cover. We definitely need a goalkeeper. And we probably need a connecting, and potentially a connecting midfielder in centre midfield, whether it be a physical player or a free transfer in Max Meyer, right? So we know that, in my opinion, that's what we need. But then we've got decisions to make over the complementary skills that we have. They're very much overlapping. We may have to decide, well, who's the one we put our house on? And that's not even talking about Maitland-Niles, for example, who can also do that number 8 role. Who are we going to put our house on? And who do we need to say, well, you know what? We've got another player just like you. We may need to move you on. It's not because we don't like you or not because you're not a good player. This is just squad building.
You're talking about Ramsey. I mean, you can say it. You don't have to beat around the bush, man. We're not selling him Mesut Özil because he's on three. Yeah, you can't sell Mesut
Ramsey, Özil. You could say Jack.
Well, but you can't sell Mesut Özil because, right? I mean, I'm not talking about like you can't because I don't want to. I don't want to. What I'm saying is like with the money we just put him on, there's no market for him, right?
That's the way I see it as well. But I'm not going to pick on a name because there's no point because we don't know the new manager, we don't know the identity.
Pick on a name. Put yourself out there.
So what Clive thinks about the squad building, it's almost immaterial, right? But what I will say is, you only look at our squad and look how many players play the same way, and we do need to change that balance. And so to do that, there's a decision coming. And I've always felt that we can't keep them all, because we're not going to improve how we play, not going to be able to play in a style which accumulates points. We can't keep them all. We have to change something. And I am not one of those that believe that this same group of players is going to find 35 points. under a new manager. I don't believe that.
Well,
I think we've
no
got to
one's
make
getting to
changes.
100. No one's getting to 100 points next season. So if City do that again, we're not winning the title. So I guess the better question is: Could this team get 20 points? Could they get to 80? Could they get to 82? Could they get to 85?
Well, they've dropped about 12. They should never have dropped. If you just add in the Swansea.
Because the home
Bournemouth,
form is there,
Brighton,
Clive, right? I mean, if we repeat this
West
home
Brom,
form next season,
Stoke, just add those games in there,
right?
and that's just being professional. Just add those games, those away games there.
We lost at Brighton,
and we're in a much more in a competitive position, right? So, but we lost them. And I know Arsenal team has lost that many away games for as long as I can remember, and we have to ask ourselves why. Will a new coach change all that, or do we need to change some of the players? I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah. All right. Look. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you've said. And by the way, I mean, our home form is good enough to be a title challenger. It is. And the thing that makes the away form tough and makes it hard to evaluate this season, and I'm not trying to be revisionist or exonerate the team, but we started the season with Alexis Sanchez coming back slowly, and then Alexis Sanchez was there, but then Alexis Sanchez maybe didn't want to be there, and then we sold Theo Walcott and Olivier Giroud and Francis Conklin and Alexis Sanchez in one window in the middle of the season, and brought in Aubameyang and Mkhitaryan, and it took a while for them to hit the ground, and there was a Europa League campaign, and so a very, very weird season in that respect. I mean, Tim, let's stick narrowly for a second, though, on the issue of the midfield three. I don't think a midfield 2 plus Ozil can challenge for the league. I've seen it, and it doesn't work. I don't think it gives us the control. I don't think it gives us the consistency. What is Ozil's role, in your opinion, going forward? Is there a way to get a midfield 3 and Ozil in the team that makes the most use of our talent, or do we just keep banging our head into the 2 plus Ozil model?
I mean, it's very difficult to say because we don't know what the new manager's going to do. I still think we should go to a back 3.
Now you've got Clive listening again.
I still think that's the best way. I still think that's the best way of getting a front 2. Let's look at where our strength is in the squad, and we're saying that we've got really good attacking players and we're kind of sorted there. So, let's build on that. And it's the best way of getting a front 2 with Özil behind them, and then having a back 3. And the wing backs, therefore, negates our complete and utter lack of width as well. And doing maybe a 3-5-1-1 or a 3-5-2 or, whatever. I think that's a very, very, very viable way with what we've got. And if we're also talking about, one of the young centre-halves might have to step up and take a more senior role next season, that's probably going to be easier for them to do in a back 3 than it is in a back 4. So if we're talking about, I think Callum Chambers has been excellent this last 6 weeks or so, or if we're talking about Rob Holding or Mavropanos or whoever, if they're going to make that step up, I really think that playing in a back 3 might be the best way to do that, and particularly if we're going to be in a situation where we've got to play more than one of them at once. To me, that seems like the most viable way. We've just paid, we've just put down big money on an Özil contract, and let's have it right. We got him to sign that contract because we were offering him more money than anyone else did. So if we were looking at going down the avenue of shifting him, it might be very, very difficult because evidently nobody else outside of China was willing to pay that kind of wedge for him in January. So they're not going to pay it in July either. So, I don't want to say we're stuck with Özil because that's like a ridiculous phrase. But, I don't think we can really countenance that. We've thrown our lot in there now. And we need to find a way to make it work. And for me, Özil, Lacazette, Aubameyang together, that works. Back 3, that works. Whether, or that potentially works. And then with our midfield, our midfield needs complete reconstruction anyway. So if that's the way the new manager wants to go, then let's just buy the midfield. He's already got Xhaka there. Buy someone who can partner Xhaka and,
and sell Ramsey?
Probably doesn't have to be... Do you think that
a lot of people are pointing to his sort of extended autograph signing and lingering at the stadium on Sunday as a sign that he's off? I mean, is that do you read anything of that?
I'm not convinced that decision's made, but I think that decision will be. I think Arsenal will definitely extend if he wants to. I think it would have been done by now if it was completely up to Arsenal. So that tells you the decision's coming from Ramsey. I happen to think he won't stay. If he does, I'd be delighted. But if he doesn't, I don't think it's the end of the world. As much as I like him, because his injury problems, I don't think they're going to get any better with age and the type of player he is. He might not age brilliantly, but then again, like Frank Lampard aged pretty well. So maybe he can, but that it would be a blow, but I don't think it'd be the end of the world. Özil, that's not an avenue I think we can go down at this
Nor
point.
should we. I mean, he's a special player.
No,
if you can't find a way to win with Mesut Özil, I think that's your fault, not his. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not much different from Bergkamp in that respect. Imagine trying to accommodate Dennis Bergkamp now in an era where like the two striker thing isn't really there. Bergkamp
I'd give it a shot.
Well, yeah, of course. But Bergkamp went through long periods of inconsistency, and in the modern day, he'd be, he was considered a second striker. Now he'd be expected to be an attacking midfielder. There's been a slight change in the number 10 role, and the number 10 role that he used to play doesn't really exist at the highest level anymore. But you're right, you'd give it a try, wouldn't you? So I think we've got to find a way to make it work. I think there is potentially a way there to make it work. But it's all on the new manager. He might decide, you know what? No, I'm not interested. I don't want that. I want to go down a different path. So we'll see.
Do you have any saltiness about Özil taking the rest of the season off, or couldn't care less?
No, not really. I've got no reason to believe he hasn't got a back injury. He's got a World Cup coming up. These games don't really mean a great deal at this point. Maybe over the long term, I'd like him to play north of the Watford gap a little bit more next season. But I don't think, given the criticism he got on Thursday night, which I thought was quite unfounded, to be honest, I don't think Arsenal would have wanted to take him out of the firing line, particularly for a game like this. He'd have loved this game. So I tend to think there's probably don't get me wrong, I'm sure if there was something riding on these games he could play them, but if he's carrying a bit of a back complaint, no, that's fine with me.
Fair enough. I mean, last quick question for you here, Tim, on this is do you agree with my assessment that Iwobi has sort of sparkled a little bit in the midfield role, and that maybe that's the future's a little further back up the pitch for him?
Yeah, maybe, but he's been quite inconsistent. We've seen some really, there's every chance he'll play there again on Wednesday and be awful. But he'll get that chance now in the next two games without Özil there, and that's a good thing. There's not an awful lot riding on them anyway, so let's find out if he can string 4 good games together. Yeah,
and I realize the irony of saying a little further back up the pitch and playing in midfield. He wound up getting a goal in the game, so there's that end product we've been talking about. It was just such an enjoyable game to watch, and it was Arsene's the best of what Arsene's philosophy can be. A lot of players expressing themselves with free roles, going out there and confusing the hell out of the opposition and dominating them. And I think our home form this season is encouraging. Look, any team that can rack up the points we did at home, that can rack up the goals we did at home, that has the attacking talent we have, can't be totally written off as not being a factor next season. And when I see people saying that the manager has left the team in a terrible position, I just have the hardest time understanding where that's coming from. And I realize, we're not challenging Manchester City for the title next season, but I equally don't think we are the next, early aughts Liverpool, cut adrift from the top 4.
We're the 6th best team. That's it.
See, I just don't know that we are. I just don't know that. I mean, I think, and things can change so quickly. I look at Chelsea and I see a very mediocre team now. Realize things.
I'm not saying things can't change.
We're the 6th best team right now. This year,
we're the 6th best team in all the numbers. We're the 6th best team. And that's it, and that's where we are. And it's very difficult. I don't want to be critical the day after one of the most momentous days in our history. And after a 5-0 win in the sunshine, it's not really a time to pull us all apart.
There's always a time for that, Clive. Trust me.
Yeah, let's just contextualise it. Every single player looked fantastic, right? And a few days earlier, we had a few players hiding behind Atletico Madrid shirts, right? I'm under pressure here. So I'm just going to breathe a little bit and wait and see what the future holds and see what type of team we want to construct. I'm a big fan of the back three. If you walk into this club right now, looking at our set of players and thinking, okay, I've got to work this squad for my life, the quickest way to Rome with the ages of our centre backs, with the fact we've got no real wingers, the quickest way is to invest in a wing back, full back, cover the wide areas, and use all these interior players that we have and work out who's going to shine and work out who's not going to shine and move the one that's not going to shine out, make sure the ones that are going to shine get plenty of game time. And we make sure we have 2 forwards on the pitch at all times, and we move the emphasis of our game further forward. That's the quickest way to success, and then you build and upgrade from within that framework. And then if you want to go to a separate framework, or more of an attacking 4-3-3 at home, that makes perfect sense as well. So I think I'm just going to hold my hands up a little while, hold my thoughts, and say, okay, what's going to happen going forward? We've seen the Allegri stuff on the Ornstein Twitter tonight. We've got a deadline of the World Cup. It's just basically telling you a timeline. That's all they're doing there. It'll be done before then. I think Allegri's a 2-1 favourite, and I think Ornstein's more or less telling us that. He's saying that he's going to leave Juventus. Let's see what happens, see how he wants to play. He's played with 4 at the back, he's played with 3. He moves around system to system. Let's see what happens. I'm really not too sure, but if I was a manager, I would definitely want to go 3 at the back and build from there.
I don't disagree with that. I think the nice thing is it gives you the flexibility of either going 3-5 or sort of a 3-4-2-1. 3-4-2-1. Yeah,
3-5-2.
so what I mean is you can do Mkhitaryan and Ozil behind Lacazette or Aubameyang, or you could do Lacazette and Aubameyang ahead of Mkhitaryan or Ozil. You know what I mean? And you can kind of change how that's structured. The thing that's really interesting, you guys, is if you think about it, we still haven't really seen much of Mkhitaryan as an Arsenal player or Aubameyang as an Arsenal player. Kolasinac basically had a non-starter season, right? A do-over. In the United States, we call it a redshirt freshman season. No one's going to understand what that means, but sort of a sit-it-out kind of season. There are players that we don't entirely know what to make of. Mavropanos has just dipped a toe in the first team, and he looks like he could be good. Chambers' form is rounding out a little bit. So, I mean, there's still a lot of good stuff here, I think, to look forward to, and not to mention some of these young players who have had just little cameos this season, like Maitland-Niles, could wind up playing a significant role next season. A new manager with new ideas, plus maybe a new player or two, can make everything look totally different. So
I'll tell you what will happen next year, Elliot, which happened this year, but it'll have a different meaning. We're back in the Europa League again, right? So with a manager that's really going to have to improve our league position. So we will go back to that 2-team scenario again in the early part of the season. And I think that's going to be the real period when he's going to look at what he's got, and he can look at them in a competitive game, in a really competitive game. And it's going to be interesting to see the first team, second team scenario again for the first half of the season. And we found Jack again during that period. We maybe lost Giroud through to that period. So it's going to be interesting to see how he manipulates the squad for that first 3-4 months.
Speaking of which, I thought Giroud had some nice comments after his game for Chelsea about the manager, and also headed home the goal that gave them the win that still keeps alive the possibility that Spurs could finish outside the top 4. So, he's still an Arsenal man at heart. I can admit that. Let's finish with just one more, kind word about Arsene and about the day itself. So, Tim, just in terms of his speech and the words that he had to say, I thought they were very moving. I mean, were you moved and impressed by what he had to say? Obviously, when they handed him the microphone.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you saw, I go to the AGM most years nowadays, and what you see is a great orator, someone who's very, very at ease. That's not. I do some public speaking. I kind of deliver training a lot in my job, so I kind of tend to think I'm all right with things like public speaking. But speaking to 60,000 people on your last game there, when you've been there for 22 years, I've seen my fair share of retirement speeches.
He wasn't reading off a card either,
No. And doing that in front of 60,000 people with such ease, because when I thought, obviously he's going to do a speech, and I thought, oh God, I wonder if he'll cry, because it must be really, really hard not to. at a time like that. But there was no, and I wouldn't have blamed him had it. I was kind of expecting it, to be honest, but just completely held together, and it showed you what a great orator he is, and you get a glimpse from that of what he must be like in the dressing room, in terms of the kind of aura he has, because that's not easy, like delivering team talks and keeping groups of like 30 plus young competitive men engaged and listening to you. And he had everyone eating out the palm of his hand, and I've seen it at AGMs time and time again where the chairman has spoke reprehensibly to the people who've deigned to ask him questions, where the majority owner doesn't say anything at all, and neither does his son. And Arsene saves those occasions, absolutely rescues them. And what I saw yesterday really reminded me of that, where Sir Chips got booed, the Cronkies were up on the screen and they got booed, but then Wenger walks in and there's just this instant reverence. And it's why I've really railed against this idea that like I said earlier, like Arsenal fans are forcing him out and they all hate him and they're all protesting against him. There has always, it's not even been an undercurrent. There has always been that reverence there, even in the difficult times. There has really been that absolutely visible reverence for the man, and we really saw it in that speech. And he handles that kind of occasion, that kind of scenario brilliantly. And I really liked his speech. I liked him starting it with the Ferguson thing, which I think is, it's perhaps not really appropriate to tie that into any kind of narrative surrounding this. But, it must be a reminder for him and for everyone of, the fragility of life. These were guys who duelled for close to 20 years and in the same week, one of them's in a fragile position, one of them's, leaving the club. It must be a little bit poignant for Arsene.
You can't help but draw the comparisons. I'm sorry, I totally agree with that. There's nothing wrong with saying that. You can't help it. If you're Arsene too, I think a big thing that has kept Arsene in the job is the fear that if he retires, he has to confront the fact that he's getting older and the end is near. Not near, hopefully, but you know what I mean, in front of you. Yeah.
Absolutely, it must be really poignant, and particularly when they had that nice moment just last week with the presentation and everything, and they've really grown in respect towards each other, not just since Ferguson left. I think it started a few years before that. I think it started with perhaps Mourinho and Abramovich, and they kind of looked round at each other and thought, oh, it's just us two old fuckers like taking on these absolute bastards now, and everything, as you'd expect from Arsene, was perfectly measured. And I actually really liked the quite curt ending to this quite emotional, like almost tear-jerking, statesman-like speech where he just said, like, thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.
and that was it. I actually really liked that. I thought that was maybe not fitting, but... because the man says he doesn't like to look back and things like that. And yesterday must have been, Sunday must have been very, very odd for him. But that was kind of a nice, quite informal ending to it all. And I'd be, nothing would make me happier than to see him, in the director's box regularly. At the stadium, regularly a part of the club. I'm sure he's going to keep his distance, for the first year or two, so as not to cast a shadow. And I think he will have that respectful distance for his successor. But in a couple of years, I'd love to see him as a regular in the director's box. I'd love to see him comparing club. I'd love to see him. Maybe not a part of things in terms of, being on the board or something like that. I don't know. Like, I think maybe he'd make a great chairman. I don't think he'd want that, but, I'd like to think that this isn't the complete end of his association with the club, whether that be formal or informal. There'll be that couple of years where I think rightly he'll keep his distance, but, I'd love to see him back one day in the director's box with a blanket over his lap, quietly grumbling about Mikel Arteta or Vieira or whoever's in the dugout, I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him come back, if not in a
holding up
capacity.
a piece of A4.
yeah, saying like Arteta out.
You're kidding yourself, because he's not going to have any time for anything other than writing this 1,000-page book he's going to have to write, my friend. So that's it. Clive, is the hardest part of moving on from him going to be the way he speaks about the game and speaks about life? Like, whoever the new man is, when he sits down for that first press conference and opens his mouth and you think, you're no Arsene, mate. Like, is that going to be the hardest part? Just that nobody speaks the way this man has spoken about football for 22 years?
Yeah, well, we're going to get a new coach, right? And we're going to have a coach who's going to potentially produce some very good results one day, and we're going to love that coach if they do well, and if they don't do well, maybe we won't love them. And whoever comes in, if it's ever possible for anyone to be irreplaceable, it's him. You can't replace him as a man. You can replace him in his role as a coach, but as an individual, he's right up there, isn't he? And I said last week, he's almost beyond the game of football. It was obvious he's beyond the game of football. His thought process, how he looks at life, how rounded individual he is, his depth of topics he can speak about. He's just beyond football. And I find it astonishing how lazy as a club we were to just allow him to derail, right? And I think it's wrong. And I think it's going to cost us a couple of years. And then he will come back, hopefully, as club president, in a role where he can represent us in the globe and represent our club as we would expect it to. Because right now, a lot of people yesterday were sad, and they're also looking at themselves and thinking, crikey, did we treat him right? Did I slag him? Was I really that bad? Because you look at the man and you think, bloody hell, he's top class. He just looked at everybody in that ground and looked at them like he loved them, and everybody in that ground at some point in time has gone, for fuck's sake, Wenger. You know what I mean? And we take out our frustrations on him, and then you see the man open up and you think, crikey, you're top class. And I've met him once or twice. I've been lucky enough to go to Arsenal training, and I've met him and stood there and spoke to him. And my goodness, mate, he's just revered throughout the whole club. He was about 4 or 5 years ago, but just like revered throughout the whole club, and everybody hangs on his every word, and his presence is just all over the ground, all over the training ground. Everything comes back to him. He dominates, and people talk about him after wins, after defeats, and everything is about him. And when he comes past, he goes jogging every day, and he jog up to the group of people that come to watch training, and he'll come and speak to every single one of you. And every one of us just stood there catching flies in our mouth. Do you know what I mean? He's just a different class. He's just different class. Yeah. And there's so many idiots in the game that are not fit to lace his boots. But I'm afraid the game is about winning football matches, and this is where people look and we judge him on the minutiae. And hey, look, change comes to us all. I'm not the same man I was 10 years ago, right? So
for the better.
Change comes to us all. Absolutely, change comes to us all. And,
you nailed it, Clive. And he said it himself. He said, when he meets his maker and they say, what did you do with your life? He'll say, I tried to win football games. So no matter what we say about his philosophy, his ideals, he's a man who recognizes that his job was to win football games, and I will miss so much about him, but I also think it is fair to say that, Arsene, maybe you just stopped winning enough football games, and that's okay. And that means it's time to step aside. And, he did speak nicely about, stepping aside and seeing what a new man can do, and that we should all get behind the new manager and get behind these players, and I'm glad he said that, because I think there may be some corners of the fans, we've talked about the Wenger out brigade or whatever it is, the people that maybe hounded him out a little more than they should have, but there are also the people that have adored Arsene almost like a member of the family, who may be resistant to care for the next man. And look, the good news is that the cycles now are going to be shorter. You'll have a manager for 3, 4, maybe 5 seasons. You don't have to hold him to your bosom the way you have with Arsene. You don't have to adore him like you did a family member. You just have to like his tactical approach to the game and the results he gets. And maybe that takes a little bit of pressure off all of us as fans, because there is sort of an Olympic sport out there among some people of trying to perform their love for Arsene Wenger better than other people perform their love for Arsene Wenger. and it gets to be a bit too much at that point. The reality is he's a man we all have great appreciation for, great respect for, did a brilliant job. This was a job, and he did it brilliantly for most of 22 years, and we thank him for that. I think it'd be inappropriate on this occasion to talk about who the next manager will be. I think given the statement that Ornstein put out, we probably have a little bit of time to get to that, and we still have to do a couple more podcasts before the end of the season, and then a sort of season summary podcast. Those are good chances to look ahead to squad changes, to next manager, things like that. We've got some really great questions on Twitter about the next manager too, but I just think given the occasion, let's put a pin in that and come back to it in the next episode. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Give us a 5-star review. Write nasty things about Paul and his cloven leg, his hoof, whatever he's got on the end of his ankle. His Robert Huth. It is quite a sight. In any event, though, we hope to have him back. Quick bit of bookkeeping. I actually will not be here for the podcast after Leicester, so you will be in good hands for a change. In any event, Tim's on Twitter at Stoberto. Thanks, Tim.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup. De rien. Je vous en prie. Et aussi, Clive. Clive est en Twitter. Clive's on Twitter at Clive PAFC. Thanks, Clive.
I'll just stick with thank you very much.
Yeah, that'll work. My name is Elliot Smith. Tu peux block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. And we will be back. I will not be back. I will be back, hopefully, but not after the next one. But the podcast will be back after Arsenal 10, Leicester 0. Merci beaucoup, Arsene.